I've always believed in working hard and keeping my head down. For 3 years, I'd been the go-to project coordinator at Lockridge Consulting, a mid-sized firm in Denver, Colorado. My performance reviews were stellar, my deadlines were always met, and my boss, Greg Stanton, never missed a chance to take credit for my work. But I didn't mind it at first. Everyone has a Greg in their office, the charming, middle-aged manager who talks more than he works. The kind of man who shakes hands with the CEO and then dumps all his tasks on his subordinates. I was fine being invisible, until Greg's mistake nearly destroyed my career. It started with a major client, Lansing and Meyer, one of our biggest accounts. Greg mishandled a project timeline. He approved a deliverable before QA could verify it. The client caught a glaring data error, and the deal almost fell apart. Instead of owning up, Greg decided to rewrite history. He told HR that I had sent the wrong file. He CC'd the client in an email, apologizing for Ava's oversight. I was stunned when I saw it in my inbox. I walked into his office, voice shaking. "Greg, that's not true. You were the one who..." He smirked, leaning back. "You'll thank me later, Ava. It's better if HR thinks it was you. I can fix this for you if you stay quiet." That's when I realized he wasn't just incompetent, he was manipulative, and he'd just made a fatal mistake. I filed a complaint with HR the next morning. But HR wasn't on my side. Linda, the HR manager, was Greg's lunch buddy. They'd worked together for years. When I presented the email trails and project logs showing Greg's approval timestamps, she brushed it off. "These things happen, Ava. Let's just move forward and not escalate this, okay?" I felt invisible. I'd done everything right, documented, reported, followed procedure, and still, Greg's word carried more weight than my evidence. That's when something inside me shifted. If they were going to play politics, I'd play chess. Over the next few weeks, I became silent but observant. Every meeting, every email, every late-night Slack message, if Greg said something questionable, I documented it. I created a private, time-stamped folder on a personal drive, outside the company network. Inside, I stored everything. Asterisk, project timelines showing his falsified approvals. Asterisk, screenshots of him forwarding my reports to upper management under his name. Asterisk, even an HR memo he had edited before forwarding to the VP. It wasn't just about proving my innocence anymore. It was about showing that Greg was a liability to me, to HR, and to the company. And then came the golden opportunity. Lockridge had to pass a Department of Labor compliance audit. The HR department sent out a policy memo requiring every team leader to report overtime hours accurately. Greg, of course, ignored it. He'd been falsifying time records for months, underreporting his team's overtime to make his department look efficient. And because he used my credentials to submit those records, I had access to all the back-end logs. Every falsified entry was right there, with Greg's email approval on top. When the auditors arrived, HR was in panic mode. Linda called me into her office. "Ava, Greg says you handled the timesheets. We'll need you to walk the auditors through the entries." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Oh, I'd be happy to." The audit day felt like poetic justice. I calmly presented the time-stamped approvals, showing exactly how Greg had submitted false reports right after HR's policy email. The auditor's eyebrows shot up. "Miss Monroe, just to confirm your manager approved these changes himself?" "Yes, sir. Here's the email chain showing his authorizations." The silence that followed was glorious. Linda's face drained of color. Greg sat across from me, jaw tight, fingers tapping the table. He tried to spin it. It must have been a system glitch, but the timestamps were damning. The auditors left without saying much, but HR called an emergency meeting within hours. When I walked into that meeting, the atmosphere was different. Linda wasn't smirking anymore. She began cautiously. "Ava, we've reviewed the audit logs. They're concerning. We'd like to hear your side." For once, HR wanted my side. I laid it all out. The emails, the falsified approvals, the manipulated client correspondence. I showed them the email where Greg had told me to stay quiet if you know what's good for you. Linda's expression hardened. By the end of my presentation, she wasn't defending Greg anymore, she was covering herself. If HR ignored this, they could be found negligent by the auditors. Greg had turned me into his scapegoat, but now the company realized he was their ticking time bomb. Within a week, Greg was suspended pending investigation. Within a month, he was gone. HR didn't fire him for the audit scandal. They labeled it gross misconduct involving falsified records. He lost his position, his reputation, and even his severance. And me? HR promoted me partly as damage control, partly as recognition. They couldn't risk losing the one person who had kept their department from a compliance nightmare. Greg tried to contact me once afterward, through LinkedIn. His message was short. "You didn't have to destroy me." I never replied. Because he was wrong. He destroyed himself. I just held up the mirror. Months later, Lockridge introduced new HR protocols. Asterisk. All approvals must have digital trace logs. Asterisk. Managers can't edit compliance records. Asterisk. Employee complaints require dual review. HR even asked me to train new hires on documentation integrity. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sometimes, when I walk past Greg's old office, I remember how powerless I felt that day he pinned his mistake on me. Now, that office belongs to me. And I keep a framed note on my desk, a reminder of the day HR learned who they really work for. It says, "Trust, but verify." If there's one thing I've learned, it's that revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes, the best revenge is being right documented, time-stamped, and irrefutable. HR used to be my nightmare. Now, I became theirs.
Thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this, go watch the one on the left and don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel for more tales of triumph over injustice and a saga of ultimate revenge.